Lieutenant Emma Carter thought she had everything: a perfect career, a perfect future, but then the man she loved betrayed her in the most unforgivable way, pulling her into a conspiracy that threatened everything she held dear. The man she was about to marry wasn't who she thought he was. He was part of a plot that could destroy her, her regiment, and the nation. But when her own soldiers arrived, not to capture her, but to stand by her, Emma found a new purpose in redemption, not escape. And believe me, the twist that follows will leave you speechless. Justice was never so sweet. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, the kind of day that every girl dreams of, a day filled with promises of a future, laughter, a shared life built on trust and love. But for Lieutenant Emma Carter, standing in front of the mirror in her wedding dress, everything felt hollow. The gown was pristine, delicate lace woven with the promise of something beautiful. It was exactly what she had imagined. Yet, as she adjusted the satin straps, something heavy settled in her chest. She had been prepared for the ceremony, ready to pledge herself to someone she had believed in with all her heart. But the man she was supposed to marry wasn't the man she thought she knew. Beneath the surface of his easy smile and charming gestures, there were shadows, dark, whispered secrets she had turned a blind eye to for too long. The promises he had made, the vows he had sworn, had always felt too perfect. Emma had convinced herself that it was just her own doubts, her own fears. Until one night, she overheard something that shattered the life they had been building together. He wasn't the person he pretended to be. He was part of something darker, something that threatened everything she stood for. It was a conspiracy, far-reaching and deep, one that could cost lives, endanger her entire unit, and, if it wasn't stopped, bring harm to the very country she had pledged her life to defend. She had felt the ground crumble beneath her feet in that moment, as though the foundation of her life, the future she had imagined, had been a lie all along. And yet, she had stayed, too scared to face the truth. Until today, the day of the wedding. As the guests arrived, as the flowers bloomed in the hall and the music swelled in the background, Emma knew she couldn't go through with it. She couldn't stand next to him, hold his hand, say the words she had rehearsed so many times, knowing what she knew now. The guilt tore through her, the crushing weight of her decision paralyzing her. And in the middle of it all, she made her choice. She turned, silently slipping out of the room, her heart racing with a mix of fear and relief. She didn't have a plan, no destination in mind, only the overwhelming need to run, to escape from everything, him, the lies, the life that had been mapped out for her without her consent. As she stepped outside, the cold air bit at her skin. The world seemed unchanged, the sky still a soft shade of pale blue, the sun rising lazily on the horizon. But inside her, everything had shifted. She was no longer the woman in the white dress, walking down the aisle to her future. She was something else now. Someone who had abandoned the dream for the sake of survival. Her boots hit the ground with a muffled thud as she ran. No direction, no destination. The sharp sting of regret cut through her, but she pushed it down, focused only on the rhythm of her footsteps. She couldn't afford to look back. If she did, she might never leave. Hours later, as the sun began to set, Emma found herself at a dilapidated way station, the kind of place no one stopped at anymore. The faded sign barely clung to its post, a reminder of a past long forgotten. She had no memory of how she got here, no clear recollection of the road that led her to this lonely, abandoned place. Her legs felt like lead, her body exhausted from the running, her mind still racing with the ghosts of everything she had left behind. Emma collapsed onto the cracked concrete, her knees giving way as she sank to the ground, the weight of the world crashing down on her all at once. The tears came then, not the tears of sorrow she had expected to shed for the life she thought she had lost, but tears of confusion, of uncertainty. She was alone. She had chosen this. Yet now, in the quiet of the way station, she couldn't help but wonder if she had chosen wrongly. What now? She had left the man she thought she loved behind, but what would she become without him? Was this escape worth the cost? In the cold, as the darkness of night settled in, Emma shivered, not from the chill, but from the weight of her own choices. There was no going back. She was running, But from what? As Emma sat there in the cold, her mind spun with the weight of everything she had just thrown away. Her fingers, numb from the biting chill, trembled as she hugged her knees to her chest, trying to hold on to something, anything, to make sense of the chaos inside her. The sounds of the world around her felt distant, muffled by the storm that raged within her. She had run. She had escaped everything she thought she knew. But now, sitting on the cracked concrete of the abandoned way station, she didn't feel free. She felt more lost than ever. Her escape had been more than just a rejection of her fiancé. It was a rejection of everything she had believed in. All her life, Emma had been taught to trust in loyalty, to honor her word, to sacrifice for the greater good. These values had been the pillars that supported everything she had built her life upon. They were the foundation of her military career, her relationships, even her sense of self. But what was left when those values crumbled? What was left when the very system she had pledged her life to turned out to be built on lies? The betrayal she had uncovered, the dark, twisted truth about her fiancé and the conspiracy he was part of, felt like 100 needles digging into her skin. Each revelation had torn apart a part of her soul. Everything she had fought for, everything she had believed in, was suddenly meaningless. The uniform she wore, the ideals she had sworn to uphold, the very foundation of her career, none of it mattered anymore. Her thoughts twisted like smoke, always circling back to the same place. She didn't want to be a soldier anymore. She didn't want to fight for a system that was broken beyond repair. It felt like a cruel joke. Everything she had worked toward, all the sacrifices she had made, led her to this moment of reckoning. Alone, betrayed. The cold didn't seem to bother her anymore. It was as though her entire body had gone numb, not from the chill of the night air, but from the coldness inside her. She could feel it, a void, an emptiness that had replaced the certainty and purpose she once had. She wanted to escape this feeling, to forget everything. But there was no running from herself. And then the sound cut through her thoughts, the distant rumble of military trucks. At first, Emma wasn't sure if she had really heard it. Maybe it was just the wind. Maybe it was the product of her panicked mind, always searching for something to fear. But then the sound grew louder, unmistakable, the thrum of engines, the grinding of tires on rough dirt. Her heart stuttered. Could it be him? No, it couldn't. She had left him behind, and he couldn't possibly know where she was, could he? But as the rumble grew closer, doubt began to claw at her. She had spent years in the service, and she knew that the military didn't waste time. They were efficient. They were everywhere, watching, waiting. She didn't know if it was him, or if it was just the weight of her own choices closing in on her, but the fear felt suffocating. The realization hit her all at once. She wasn't free. Not at all. Emma had run, but the world wasn't going to let her go so easily. No matter how far she went, no matter how many miles she put between herself and the life she had known, she would never outrun what she had left behind. The trucks grew louder still, the sound vibrating through her bones. Was it just a patrol? Was it just a coincidence? Or were they already hunting her? She couldn't know for sure, but in that moment it didn't matter. The weight of her decisions, of her flight from everything she had once held dear, settled on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. She had thought she could escape. She had thought she could leave it all behind, walk away and start fresh. But now, the truth was clear. There was no running from this. There was no simple escape. The world was closing in. And Emma wasn't sure if she was strong enough to fight back. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pale pink and gold, Emma heard it. Distant footsteps, steady and rhythmic. Her body was frozen in place, her mind still racing from the last few hours, from the uncertainty, from the weight of the decisions that had led her to this moment. She barely had the strength to lift her head, but when she did, the sight that greeted her took her breath away. A line of soldiers, moving in perfect synchrony, marched toward her in their immaculate dress blues. Their precision was flawless, their posture unyielding, and as they drew closer, Emma's heart sank. It wasn't him. It wasn't the man she had feared would come for her. No, it was far more overwhelming than that. It was her entire regiment. For a moment, time seemed to stretch. The ground beneath her felt as if it had shifted, leaving her in a world that no longer made sense. How had they found her? How had they known where to look? The soldiers didn't speak. They moved as one, every step calculated, their eyes forward, unwavering. They closed the distance between them and Emma, their presence undeniable. Her first instinct was to run, to flee again, to keep going, to stay one step ahead of the world that had already turned against her. But her legs wouldn't move. She couldn't escape them. She couldn't escape what was happening here, now. And then they were upon her. Each soldier, one by one, stopped in front of her. They didn't speak, but each of them saluted her with a gesture so filled with respect and sincerity that it made Emma's chest tighten. She had never expected this. She had never anticipated that her brothers and sisters in arms would greet her like this, after everything, after she had walked away from it all. Emma had always been the tough one, the leader. She had always been the one setting the example, standing tall, unwavering in her convictions. But now, here she was, broken. She had run, but there was no escaping the truth. She hadn't escaped from her past. She hadn't escaped from the person she used to be. Most of all, she hadn't escaped from them, from the people who had once been her family, who had once believed in her. It was then that she heard his voice, the voice of her commander. It was gentle, far warmer than she had expected. "Lieutenant Carter," he said, his words cutting through the cold morning air. "We've been looking for you. You don't have to do this alone." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to pull away, to retreat further into herself, but she couldn't. His voice, so familiar, so comforting, was pulling her back. It was as though the entire regiment had known, had sensed the depth of her struggle. They hadn't come for her out of duty or obligation. They hadn't come to bring her back into the fold, to punish her for her betrayal. No, they had come to rescue her, not from the enemy, not from the danger of her flight, but from herself, from the loneliness that had consumed her since the moment she had walked away. The truth was, Emma realized in that instant, they didn't care about the conspiracy. They didn't care about the lies or the betrayal that had shattered her world. They didn't care about the reason she had run. They cared about her. They cared about the person she had been, the person she could still be. They cared about each other. The coldness inside Emma began to thaw, piece by piece. The emptiness she had felt only moments before was replaced with something else, something far more complicated but perhaps more powerful. It wasn't relief. It wasn't forgiveness. It was something deeper, an understanding, a connection, a bond that had never truly broken, no matter how far she had run. The commander stepped closer, his face softening. He didn't ask her to explain. He didn't press her for answers. Instead, he simply offered her a place among them, a place where, perhaps for the first time, she might find a sense of belonging again. The soldiers waited, standing in respectful silence, as Emma took a tentative step forward. The weight of her past, of everything she had walked away from, felt a little lighter now. The world hadn't closed in on her. No, it had opened up. And in that moment, Emma understood something that had eluded her for so long. Even when everything feels lost, even when the ideals that once held you up crumble into dust, there is still room to rebuild. There is still room to find your way back. She wasn't alone anymore. Not with them standing there, not with the strength of their loyalty, their unwavering support surrounding her. And maybe, just maybe, that was all she needed to keep moving forward. The uniform, once a symbol of pride, now felt like a heavy weight on her shoulders. Every crease, every stitch seemed to remind her of the ideals she had fought for, ideals that had slowly, painfully, unraveled before her eyes. Emma had always believed that the system was sacred. She had given everything to it, her time, her trust, her very identity. But now, standing amidst her regiment, something had changed. The system might have been broken, but the people around her were not. They were the same soldiers who had stood by her in battle, who had shared laughter and silence, triumph and loss. They were the ones who had chosen to come after her, not to condemn her, but to bring her back. Not because of duty, but because they believed in who she was. The realization hit her like a wave. The bonds they shared were stronger than the crumbling foundation of everything she had once stood for. Emma had run, seeking escape from a world that had betrayed her. But now, standing in the midst of these familiar faces, she understood that running had never been the answer. The path before her wasn't one of flight, it was one of redemption, a chance to reclaim the pieces of herself she had lost, and to rebuild not just her own spirit, but the trust and loyalty of those who still believed in her. She looked around, seeing her comrades not as soldiers in a flawed system, but as individuals with their own stories, their own struggles. They weren't perfect, but in their eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in so long: hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the future could still be something worth fighting for. A single tear slid down Emma's cheek. She wiped it away quickly, as if it was a sign of weakness, but she didn't feel weak. She felt for the first time in a long while a sense of clarity. The world she had once thought of as perfect had been shattered, but it didn't mean it was beyond repair. It didn't mean that everything was lost. The foundation might have cracked, but the walls still stood, waiting to be rebuilt. Taking a deep breath, Emma squared her shoulders. She turned to face the regiment, her comrades, the people who had come for her, not just because it was their duty, but because they truly cared. And for the first time in a long while, she understood that they had never left her. "Let's go home," she whispered, her voice steady, though the weight of the moment pressed against her chest. The words hung in the air, a promise, a declaration. There was still work to be done, still a future to build. The dawn was just beginning to warm the earth, the first rays of light chasing away the remnants of the night. And with it, Emma's new beginning. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't searching for answers in the shadows. Emma was finally ready to face the truth, to fight not for the broken system she had once trusted, but for the people who still believed in her. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. It might never be perfect, but it was hers to walk, and she wouldn't walk it alone. As she stood there, shoulders squared, heart pounding with purpose, Emma knew one thing: the future was hers to shape, and she was ready to begin.